Hello and a very warm welcome to BBC News. I'm Mark Lowen. We're broadcasting live from Tel Aviv. Air raids have sounded across Israel again overnight, with its military saying that Iran fired 5 ballistic missiles through the night. While Israel's defense minister said a general in Iran's Al-Quds force, Saeed Izadi, had been killed in a targeted attack. Well, we were woken at 2:30 a.m. when sirens sounded amid a barrage of Iranian missiles around the Tel Aviv area. We all gathered in our bunker here in our hotel. This building in central Israel was reportedly set on fire by falling shrapnel from an Israeli interception missile, though the police say that they are still investigating the cause. Explosions were also heard close to the occupied West Bank. Israel's National Response Foundation said that there have been no reports of casualties. Meanwhile, Israel also launched a new wave of attacks against Iranian missile storage and launch infrastructure. Air defense systems were reportedly activated in areas of Tehran. These are pictures released by the Israeli Defense Forces. The Iranian media say that an attack on the nuclear site in Isfahan led to no leakage of hazardous material. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, President Trump has dismissed efforts by European countries to de-escalate tensions in the Middle East, hours after the foreign ministers of the UK, France and Germany met their Iranian counterpart in Geneva. Mr. Trump told journalists that Iran wants to speak to the United States, and Europe cannot help with this. Well, our chief international correspondent Lise Doucette has more on those talks in Geneva.
Well, it does seem that the pace of negotiations, or the pace of talks in an effort to get negotiations back on track, is slower than the pace of this war. Overnight, Israel and Iran continued to attack each other. The message we heard from European foreign ministers here yesterday, including the Foreign Secretary David Lammy, was that there is this very narrow window now for diplomacy before President Donald Trump will look again at that military plan that he said to have approved and possibly order military strikes. And yes, it was a bit of an insult coming from President Trump, especially after David Lammy had taken an overnight flight from Washington to Geneva to convey directly face-to-face to Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, what David Lammy had heard from Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, from President Trump's envoy, that Iran had to come back to the table and negotiate a nuclear deal to significantly curb its nuclear ambitions. But the message from Iran was, we cannot negotiate when we are under Israeli attack.
Lise Doucette in Geneva. While Iran's foreign minister is now in Turkey to discuss the conflict between his country and Israel with representatives from Muslim-majority countries. Around 40 diplomats from the Organization of Islamic Cooperation are attending the meeting in Istanbul. The Iranian foreign minister told journalists that that if Iran is to return to diplomacy, the bombing had to stop. He also said Iran believes the US has been involved in the conflict since the beginning.
In order for us to come back to diplomacy, the aggression should be stopped. It is obvious I cannot go to negotiation with the United States when our people are under bombardments, under the support of the United States. We have come, unfortunately, to the conclusion that the United States has been in this aggression from the beginning. You know, they deny, they keep saying that they are not involving, but we have many indications that they have been involved from day one. And now, you know, the tweets, interviews by the U.S. President is quite clear that he's talking about the U.S. leadership on this question. Unfortunately, we have heard that the U.S. may join this aggression. That would be very unfortunate, and I think that would be very, very dangerous for everybody.
Well, meanwhile, Israel says that an Iranian drone has hit a residential building in the northeast of Israel. We can show you pictures that have been released of that attack. It is the first time that an Iranian drone has made direct impact since the beginning of this conflict. Let's bring in the BBC's Dan Johnson in Jerusalem. Dan, tell us more about what is known about the drone attack.
Yeah, that is a house in a town close to the border with Jordan. The place is called Beit Shean, and it is, we believe, the first time, certainly in the week of this round of the conflict, that a drone has actually got through and caused damage. There's no report of any casualty there, but it does look like that drone, despite the Israeli air defence's attempt to shoot it down, did make it through and has caused some damage on the ground. And it's not the only drone that has been launched towards Israeli airspace today. A little ironic that the Israeli Defense Forces just earlier this morning were announcing that they had killed the Iranian Revolutionary Guard commander who was in charge of its drone unit. They were pleased to have removed that general from his position, having killed him in an airstrike, but it seems like his forces are still able to launch drone attacks towards Israel, and one has got through this morning.
Dan, you mentioned that Iranian drone commander who Israel says they've killed. They say, eliminated another commander from the Quds force, a branch of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Tell us more about him.
Yeah, there are actually two other members of the Revolutionary Guard that they announced this morning they have killed. Benim Shariari was in charge of weapons transfers, the Israelis say, between Iran and its proxies in Lebanon and in Gaza, Hezbollah and Hamas. And Saeed Izadi, they say, was a key figure in organising, or at least being aware of and sanctioning, the October the 7th attacks that were launched by Hamas from Gaza into Israel. They say he's someone who's been pivotal in providing funding and support for Hamas, and they say that Izadi had been a key figure in developing Iranian plans to attack and destroy Israel. So they are highlighting him as a legitimate target and someone who they believe needed to be killed in order to reduce the Iranian threat towards Israel. But given that this round of conflict started with Israel saying that it was targeting Iran's nuclear program to eliminate the threat that it felt there was of Iran developing nuclear weapons, there are people questioning why this has now already expanded into effectively assassinations of military figures. This is certainly not the first time it's happened. Israel has been using its intelligence network to pinpoint, locate and kill a number of key figures in Iran's military. But Iran is still able to launch attacks onto Israel, and it's not just the drones. We saw missile attacks overnight, although those were all successfully intercepted in the last 24 hours. But we saw damage yesterday, despite the Israeli effectiveness in taking out and attacking the Iranian missile launch sites.
Dan Johnson in Jerusalem, thanks very much indeed. Well, a little earlier, I spoke to our South Caucasus correspondent, Reyhan Dimitri, who is on the Iranian-Armenian border on the Armenian side. She's in Mehri, and she told us a little bit about the flow of people going across the border from Iran.
Well, Mark, I wouldn't describe it as a mass exodus, but there is definitely a regular flow of people coming out of Iran. We've spent this morning here, and we're trying to approach all of the people that are coming through. And these people, well, understandably, they have very little trust in journalists. They are mainly kind of refusing to talk. But those who are speaking to journalists, they have described, one man was traveling from Isfahan, and he said that there were explosions a couple of days ago, that some soldiers were killed. But he said that civilians were unarmed. We are seeing a lot of people who are traveling all the way from the Iranian capital, Tehran. They're describing long hours, up to 15 hours on roads to reach the border with Armenia. One man told us that there were no fuel shortages or bread shortages, but he said, and it once again kind of, we've heard this account over and over again, that Tehran appears to be largely deserted. People, those who could leave, they left the capital. They either traveled to their summer houses or they traveled to the border countries and are trying to leave the country via Kuwait, Iraq, Turkey or Armenia.
And Rayhan, you talk about some of the places that they have come from. I mean, Isfahan, 1,000 kilometers from that border, Tehran, 800 kilometers. These are massive distances. And of course, they're coming into a southern Armenian border town of just 4,500 people. So how are the authorities in Armenia coping with this influx of people?
Well, none of the people that we've spoken with are planning to stay in the town of Mehri, where we are based now. They are mainly traveling to the capital, Yerevan, and are getting flights out of Armenia. So the vast majority of people that have been coming through this border over the past couple of days that we've been reporting from here, they are telling us that they have residency or citizenship in European countries, or they have places outside Armenia where they can go, where they have families and relatives. There are also quite a lot of ethnic Armenians that live in Tehran, and they are coming to Armenia to join their relatives and friends. But the Armenian authorities are saying that if the situation escalates, if there's really a mass exodus, then they will be ready for that. They will help people with transportation to get them out of this border area. But at this stage, Mark, we're not seeing mass exodus of Iranians.
Rayhan Dimitri on the Armenian-Iranian border. Well, we've also been hearing from Mara Rudman, who is a former deputy envoy for Middle East peace at the US State Department. I asked her whether there is still a diplomatic way forward which prevents the United States from joining this conflict.
I think that there are still opportunities for a negotiated outcome here, if that's what you meant with your question. President Trump actually himself has said that I think he has lined up the ability for the United States to join Israel on the offensive here in terms of making available the United States bunker buster bombing ability and the planes to fly them in. But he has also been clear that he would like to see Iran agree to effectively the terms that he and his team put out before Israel's preemptive actions in Iran. And that is that would have Iran agree to halt its nuclear enrichment activity, and I'm sure agree to very strict inspections from the International Atomic Energy Association and the like.
But how dangerous a situation, Mara, do you believe that we are in when the US intelligence community and the head director of national intelligence is saying that it is their assessment that Iran is not currently weaponizing, is not currently actively building an atomic bomb, and yet the president overrules her and sides with the Israeli intelligence community instead?
So, Mark, I'm not sure I agree with your characterization of what the U.S. intelligence community has reported. I think the difference in reported views between the U.S. intelligence community and that of Israel goes to a timeline question, not a whether Iran has the intent to continue enriching activity to the point of developing a nuclear weapon. So I think it's really important to be clear on that point. The differences in timeline are key here, and recall for many earlier U.S. administrations with respect to Iraq and decisions to go in. Here, the views of the intelligence community, U.S. intelligence community, appear to be even more stark in terms of what they have released publicly on the timeline question. It's a concern to me that the President of the United States, that my president, is discounting so publicly the views of his own intelligence community. That is a concern. I've heard some Republican U.S. senators, frankly, do the same. And that's a real problem because U.S. intelligence, just like Israeli intelligence, frankly, is not politicized. The people who work there and who do their work are not politicized. They may have a variety of different views, but it's important for the leader of any country to be able to respect the information given to him by his intelligence agencies.
Mara Rudman there, former Deputy Envoy for Middle East Peace at the US State Department. Meanwhile, Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Saar has been quoted by the Israeli media as saying in the last few minutes or so that Israel believes that it has already set Iran's nuclear program back by a good 2 to 3 years. The question, as ever, is whether Israel will go further and indeed whether it will manage to co-opt the United States into destroying Iran's nuclear program completely. That's still very much up in the air, and Donald Trump saying a decision will be made within the next couple of weeks. Don't forget, you can always get much more on this story on our live page. Go to bbc.com/news for minute-by-minute updates from our teams across the region and in the US, and from BBC Persian as well. But